communities. When we talk about that the masjid doesn't have, insert whatever, that our communities don't have diversity, that our communities aren't relevant, that our communities aren't, insert whatever problem we want to put forward, you know what the solution to that is? Those people who are really struggling with their deen right now. Those people who are really struggling to be called Muhammad instead of Mo. Not that there's anything wrong with the nickname of Mo. I'm saying if you're doing it out of fear because you don't want anyone to know you're Muhammad, yeah, we're getting into some issues. But when we're talking about those people who are really struggling and on the verge of maybe leaving their deen, it could be actually through them that our entire community gets saved. And that's what we really need to think about when it comes down to the youth that are quote unquote on the outside. We need them. Because it honestly could be through them that there's some amazing guidance. And how many examples do we need in our tradition of that? We have examples like Umar ibn Khattab, right? I quoted him in the beginning. Umar ibn Khattab, what was he? It wouldn't be wrong for us to say he was a misguided youth of Mecca. The guy who was out drinking all the time, who had a temper problem, whose intellectual capacity was to the point that he didn't have a god to worship, so he made one with dates, and then when he got hungry, he ate it. But the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam, did he say, keep those people away from Dar al-Arqam? Keep those people away from my holy place of prayer? No, that's not what the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam said. The Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam says that I asked Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for one of the two Umars. One of the two Umars. Either the biggest enemy of Islam, Abu Jahl, Amr ibn Hakam, or Umar ibn Khattab. He asked for them because look at the potential of what he brought with him afterward. Literally it was said about Umar ibn Khattab that with Umar came izzah for the Muslims, came honor for the Muslims. Because it was this idea that let's invite those who have the biggest issues, that because we need them. It's not this idea of we're trying to fix them. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala guides their hearts, we want to be there to benefit. And in order to not disqualify ourselves from that, we have to have our doors open and actually have, as Imam Safwan was saying, set up an environment in which they will maybe step through once at some point. Because we sometimes are afraid that no, they're going to bring their problems with us. No, actually their problems are the reason they're going to come up with a solution, inshallah. And our community needs the solutions that they will be coming up with. So that's all I really wanted to share, inshallah, is when we think about youth, our past and our future, they've always been the source of kind of solutions or growth within our communities. And I'm not talking about we always need our mashallah youth. That's a term I use of like the mashallah youth who have like been at the masajid, that we should always make sure to keep them empowered and make sure to do whatever we can, inshallah, to keep them here. But we also need those that maybe are disenfranchised, because it's going to be a partnership between the two that's going to actually come up with solutions in order for our deen to, or our deen or the institutions of our deen to really better the society that we live in. So just wanted to start with that, inshallah. I'm really looking forward to Imam Khalil and hearing what he has to say, and then also the Q&A afterward with Imam Safwan and Imam Khalil.
I didn't know you. I was opening. That was my opening. No, actually it was, but that was the opening. That was the opening, but for the sake of time,
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum. Assalamu alaikum. So nice to be here with you all. I really feel so fortunate and honored really to continue the legacy and the good work of Imam Sohaib Sultan at Princeton and its Muslim Life program that also his wife, Arshi, who is here with us, worked so hard to cultivate and become Imam Safwan and Kaiser, the model campus community, model community. You know, it's bragging rights up here. You know, there's a little bit of that going on up here, right? you know, so, I say that because I've experienced the Muslim Life program, not only as a visitor, as a guest speaker, but also now as a person who has inherited the wonderful community that has been cultivated and created, that has become to be recognized not only locally but across the country and among all of Imam Sohaib's fellow chaplains and colleagues, of being a welcoming, diverse place for Islam to be celebrated and lived in a joyous way, to encourage our young people to be culturally aware, to be open to diversity, to be inclined towards service. So that's been cultivated. I like to say those have been the seeds that have been planted in the Garden State. It's in New Jersey, right? It's called the Garden State, right? And so we have to continue to cultivate those things through our work, through our faith, through our working together in the ways that you're seeing us tonight. And hopefully Princeton and Rutgers and the Muslim Center of Greater Princeton can form a wonderful working relationship, not only as farmers. Farmers teach us a lot, and there's a lot of farms in New Jersey. You know, when you come to New Jersey, you don't know what to expect, you know? And there are a lot of farms. And so we're cultivating our young people. We're cultivating our youth. And it takes work. You know, if you've ever farmed, if you've ever, had to, cultivate something and grow something, it takes a lot of attention, right? And so we're all farmers, right? But in many ways, as chaplains and imams, we're shepherds, right? We're also shepherds, and we have to be shepherds. And I'm giving you some examples that you can now go back and do some research and get the wisdom of the farmer and the wisdom of the shepherd. The prophets were shepherds, And chaplains in many ways take on a disposition of shepherding, right? And we're all in many ways playing that role with our young people. I don't want to take too long. What you've heard is enough. But what I want to add maybe to the conversation is to bring you all into the conversation. Perhaps not in a dialogue, we'll do that, we'll have some conversation, but I wanted to share with you something that I too have been thinking about. There is a verse in Quran, I wish I could recite it so beautifully like you, but I can't. But there's a verse that says, we have created you in the wombs of your mothers when you knew nothing, and we gave you hearing and sight. And little thanks is it that you give. So as I think about this ayat, it's about a womb, it's about a mother, a parent, it's about an environment, it's about a home, you see? And Allah grows us in that. Our young people know nothing. Remember, we were all also in the womb knowing nothing. Right now we're parents and we know it all, right? We know everything. I'm not saying just a parent. Our kids have the same attitude, right? They know it all, right? So Allah says He grows us in the womb, and shapes us when we knew nothing, and He gives us hearing and sight. So we work with a lot of young people. And one of the things that you learn is that we all want the same thing. whether you're 19 or whether you're 29 or whether you're 39 or 49 like me. So you might be the oldest here. I think I'm the oldest actually here. But we hear our students saying they want to be heard and they want to be seen. We're no different than our young people. We too want to be heard and we want to be seen. That's one of the gifts of Imam Suhaib Sultan. If you scroll through the many Facebook, what's the word I'm looking for? Post, or hear people give testimonies, that's the word I'm looking for, testimonies. Right? Most often you'll hear them say that he gave me his full attention. He was prophetic in the way that we read the prophet would turn his whole body to a person, gaze upon them when they spoke. He was intentional with whom he was speaking with. And we read countless hadith of intimate moments with young people, engaging them, hearing their opinions, seeing them. So, to just save some time, and maybe I'll try to mention this as we get into the conversation. I think it's important for all of us to think about, we've heard this before, all of us were once teenagers. Now, it's simple, we've heard it all before, but I ask us to sit with that. We were all teenagers, right? And we know that our Prophet ﷺ said that you're not among us those who don't show compassion to the old and compassion to the young. What I wanted to do is I just wrote down some notes that was going to just a quick Google search, to share with you all of the social events, all the things that happen, all the current, the political and technological and social changes that were happening in the 60s when my mother and father were teenagers. Here in America and anywhere in the world. What was happening in the 70s in terms of the ways in which societies was being shaped, formed, and pushed along. And each one of you were experiencing that and being shaped by those global and local movements. New thresholds, scientific, technological, right? Social, spiritual, and religious. Vistas were being discovered, and we were being ushered along with that and shaped by that. New knowledge at rapid pace. Just in one generation, the technology has changed and transformed our very lives, not just in efficient ways, but also having perhaps negative impacts on our lives. So, the 80s come with its changes, its economic downturns and drugs and capitalism, right? right? What students like to talk about a lot of capitalism. Everything is capitalism, everything is capitalism. But all these things, right, were happening. We get to the 90s, you got the war on drugs, mass incarceration, right? You get to police brutality. So all these things are happening. Now I've gone through 4 decades, one lifetime, maybe 50 decades, right? Left out a lot of details and things that were happening, but the reason I'm saying this is because I want you to think about how you yourself were shaped and who you became by what was happening in your world at your time. And your own struggles to make sense of what was happening around you. And to make meaning out of the world that perhaps for many of us felt like it was being divided. And with that, we too, in so many ways, have been fragmented. And so many of our students are wanting what we perhaps have been wanting all our lives in many different ways, to feel whole, to feel heard, to feel seen. And so if we just are more mindful of listening to our young people and actually seeing them, not seeing them to see what they have on before they go out of the house. I know we do that too. We know we got to do that, right? But seeing them in the way that I would talk to my friends. You see what I'm saying? You see what I'm saying? You know what I'm saying? You see what I'm saying? You understand what I'm saying? Are you even making an attempt to listen and understand what I'm feeling? And I'll leave you with this. Most of the students that we work with, most of your children have not known a world other than post 9/11. Be compassionate. Be gentle. Raise our children out of a deep place of love and understanding. Care and protection, of course. But we know that the prophet was instructed, even with his companions, to be gentle. Because if we're not gentle, we push them away or they'll run away. Doesn't mean they won't come back. But we want to keep them close to us, inshallah.
Thank you. Thank you, Imam Khalid, Imam Aslam. MashaAllah. So, I'll just take 5 minutes for my segment and then we'll do Q&A, inshallah. There's so much to reflect on from both of your beautiful talks. I wanted to start with this idea of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And by the way, every Thursday night after Isha, we have a talk on Surah Al-Kahf. And it just happened to be that I did that verse last night. SubhanAllah. But one of the things that I reflected on was how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had His light, had the sun, avoid them for a period of time in their lives. Now one could say those so that they don't burn, but this makes sense in the spiritual sense too, because they've now had this spiritual high. And now they're entering the phase of what he called the mashallah youth, where what is now the greatest sin that they can fall into? What is it? Arrogance. So how does Allah protect them from the ugliest side of themselves now that they've become religious? نُقَلِّبُهُمْ ذَاتَ الْيَمِينِ وَذَاتَ الشِّمَالِ. They go through highs and lows. They experience deep faith. Then they go and do something that was really not so smart. This is part of tarbiyah. And who is the murabbi? Allah. We need to be people of wisdom. We don't even know Allah. We don't know that Allah prescribes to us in ways that you and I cannot contemplate. Everything, single thing in our lives is perfect. Not by my conception of reality, but by the one who willed it. Because can Allah do something that is not perfect? He is incapable of that. Everything He decrees is pure perfection. And so we start with that. The reality of our youth is a divinely constructed reality. You're not dealing with youth, you're dealing with Allah. That's number one. Number two, this idea that we as a community have to do something, right, for our youth. We have to do something, right, for this demographic of people is fundamentally wrong. Because our adults are our youth, and our youth become our adults. If it didn't work for the adults, it's not going to work for the youth. It's the same thing over and over and over again. Religion that is not lived for the ma'rifah of Allah, to know Allah, to love Allah. And this is not a coincidence that atheism in the Muslim community rises at the same time that Muslims have destroyed their theology and destroyed their spirituality. And all they left for the community was fiqh. All we left for the community was law. Don't do this, don't do that. Spirituality, forget those Sufis. Theology, forget those Mu'tazila. We don't allow for proper theology, and then we call it aqidah, because we're too scared to call it kalam. We call it tazkiyah, because we're too scared to call it tasawwuf. We hide behind these things because we don't want to wake up the angry Salafi in the community. No, because once he starts going off, then watch out, because he's a millionaire. He's this, he's a founder, he's that person, he's this. And we are scared people. And then we go and let that college student feel like there's no place for Islam. Because we need to protect these people in our communities. I don't agree. I don't accept. That's number two. We need theology, we need spirituality. That's why we're learning. That's why I quote Ahmad ibn Ata'illah Sakandari, rahimahullah, in almost every talk I give. Because we need theology, we need spirituality. We need tawheed. He said we need to become whole. What does becoming whole mean? What is tawheed? Allah is one, whether you like it or not. He is one. We need to make Him one in our heart. That's what tawheed means. To become someone who knows within this heart of ours, that reality is one, the reality of Allah. And my last comment is that know that our youth are people who are living not just in a post 9/11 world, they're living in a postmodern neoliberal society. And I could take time breaking down those words, but I'm not. I'm not. What I am going to say is that there are 4 basic components to this. Blind tradition, out of the question. If you think you're going to persuade a child by trying to get them to follow a tradition blindly, forget about it. Even doctors don't have the luxury of giving a fatwa and not explaining their fatwa. Nobody buys it. Patients want to be part of the process today. They don't want to just say, oh yeah, you go ahead and get this surgery. They say, I want the research, I want the WebMD, I want the PDF printouts, right? You don't just let your doctor do surgery on you, right? You want to be part of the process. No such thing as any type of dogma, right? So blind faith, leaps of faith, blind following of fatwa doesn't work. Number 2, religion without activism. Immediately you will be exposed. Immediately. If you are religious people who care nothing about social justice, have no backbone when it comes to injustice in the world, and you're not willing to be activists, your religion to someone young, nothing. Number 3, lack of professionalism and organization. When you see that you are organizationally incompetent, not organized, the technology is lacking, when they see all of these things, also, this is a huge red flag. When they see the bad website, when they see these organizational issues, right? And then they look to their school or that job they interviewed for or those things, and they see them organized. They say, I can't believe that the people of God can't do things that people who don't know God are doing. Right? This is what they're thinking. I'm not telling you what's right or wrong. I'm telling you this is the truth. If we cannot be competent, we cannot have a rock-solid theology, and then we cannot have hearts that love fully, right? And then our institutions are organized and advanced. We do those things, I think we have a great chance, inshallah ta'ala. So I'll end with that. And barakallahu feekum, we have a lot of great stuff coming up on the schedule for this community, and I'm very excited to hear about what, I follow, I think, both groups on Instagram, but I actually haven't been too active on my Instagram. I'll ramp it up, I swear. I'm sorry, I'm sorry, everyone. I will get on IG. Barakallahu feekum. So let's take some questions then. Let's keep this mic with us. And then can we get someone to...
Since I'm gonna pass the mic, I have the first question, sorry. Over the years, what I have seen is this, that we elders and all our scholars concentrate on the youth after the problem is already there, when they're 18, 20, 22 year olds. nobody have I heard, to me it makes sense that instead of concentrating at that point in time, because all of us were youth at one point in time, how about concentrating on the parents of a pre-youth, a 12-year-old, 14-year-old, and having discussions with them to minimize the chances of those youth reaching the point that we're trying to correct. So instead of concentrating on a 20, 22-year-old problem, which is going to be much more difficult when they're 12, 13, 14, and we address that with their parents, it's something that I've never seen being discussed. I think that may be at least part of the equation. And if we are not, then maybe we are missing part of the solution.
Can we actually take like other questions and then like
Anybody here? Okay.
Assalamualaikum. Nadia Banduta, congregant of the masjid. It's really nice to have this topic. I hope we continue this discourse because it's something I wish I had growing up. I had a quick comment and then a question to follow up. The comment was, I'm in my mid-30s. I have 3 boys under 8. So my, I guess, appropriateness for the topic is here at a very early stage, and it's not really for my boys, but more of me acting as a mentor. So the question before the comment is, in our 30s, I know we want to be a welcoming kind of, I don't even want to call it a mentor because I didn't want to call my own mentors mentors, but if they come to our door and we're not chaplains or certified really to have these open discussions, are we really just there to listen? And, at what point do we respond and how can we respond in a more beneficial manner? And the comment related to this is, I grew up with a father, I went to an Islamic school, and if I was asking too many questions in the classroom, my father got a phone call that I was asking too many questions and I was disturbing the classroom. And he said, okay, that's fine, I'll pick her up. And I got home and he didn't say a word. He didn't say, why did you disturb the class? He was my listening ear. And I guess maybe I answered my own question, which is just listen. But, as chaplains, what else can we do as non-chaplains? Hopefully that sense. Thank you.
Do you mind if I
You want a third question? And answer all 3 or no?
I think we'll keep it to 2 for now. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Both very, very good and relevant questions. First, 3 boys under 8. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant you sleep that is restful. Ameen. I think they're both actually very related questions. And the first point of maybe the concentration should be given on the younger ones who maybe have not faced the, I hesitate to call it problems, because I think, how do I put this? I don't think our youth who are older, who have stepped away per se, or are not practicing in the way that we would call it practicing, it's because they are in problems. We could go as far as to sometimes say they are victims of a very confusing world. I'm going to tell you, it's confusing. Sometimes you'll scroll through your Facebook feed and you will see a young boy drowning in Yemen, like a picture of them, and then you'll see a very not halal selfie. And you have no idea what to do or how to feel. It's a weird place to be, to think that that won't have spiritual consequences. That would be the anomaly. The anomaly. It's not like those who are going through something difficult that they are problematic. Those that aren't, subhanAllah. And again, like I say this again, that we have our mashallah children, and then we have our astaghfirullah children. But I always have to say, what earns Jannah more often? Astaghfirullah. Just throwing it out there, sorry. I have to just mention that. But going back to the question, this idea that what if we focus on one group who's a little bit easier than the other, I would just like to interject and say that it's actually going to be exponentially harder to focus on the younger group when they have another generation above them who's going to be farther away from our communities. That there is no one group or another group in terms of our efforts, because they will all blend together. I see this on campus all the time. Maybe there's a young person who are just entering into college, and I actually get this request a lot from parents who are like, well, our kids come from Islamic school, so could you do programming for them? Because, they're not like the public school kids.
Oh my God, yes, that was me.
And do you think there's not going to be, first and foremost, I'm not going to make a comment about the quality of differences between Islamic schools and public schools. We're actually going to publish a paper on that soon, so you can look out for that, inshallah. Based on, we've had about 3,000 pastoral care hours in which we're trying to see what, inshallah, help we can, or what we can do with the information that has been gathered, alhamdulillah. But there's going to be interaction between different segments of the community. It's just going to happen. Our Muslims who are in their 20s will be the mentors and the bosses and the neighbors of the young people who are 5 and 6 and 7, and they will interact. Our community is all linked together. When we think about the Messenger ﷺ and the community he put forward, one of the things that we forget is there was a diversity, not just of races and ages, but also of spiritual modalities. We always talk about the Sahaba who were always at the masjid, who are hufaz. That wasn't all of the Sahaba. That wasn't all of them. Those are the ones we have the names of, but do we have the names of 300,000 Sahaba? No, what do we have? Like maybe 3,000, 4,000 if we really stretch? What were the rest of them doing? There was this idea that we would serve the bigger community because the garden of the Messenger ﷺ was extremely vast and extremely diverse. And for that to take place, that means that it's not that, let's not focus on them right now. Let's focus on these people. I think that it starts becoming self-defeating very quickly because our communities, by their very nature, interact with each other. And anytime we super target something, oftentimes it comes at the expense of another segment of our community. And I don't think in the long run that that's going to be the best solution. That's not to say that people can't specialize. So I want to make it seem like this is more of a communal effort. If you have a propensity to teach and develop curriculums, there's a lot of good work that can be done to it. As an individual, it's good to do that. If a specific school figures out a way to kind of really produce good productions for a certain group, that's not a problem. But for a community to say this is going to be the population and not this, I think there's an issue here. And then getting on to the other question, and the reason I say they're both related is the question is along the lines of, as a non-chaplain maybe, the way I have to answer that question is I still haven't figured out whether chaplaincy is a personality or a proficiency. Because Imam Khalil, maybe you can answer this question better than I can, but I've been trying to figure this question out for 12 years now. I'm not sure how much of it is actually that. But the idea of listening is anyone who's studied therapy, been in a part of therapy, been in a therapeutic relationship, that being heard is actually the solution. So is it just listening? Listening and understanding. As Imam Safwan was talking about, that it's a complicated world that people are going through. And to understand the postmodern era in which there is no one system of values that has been developed or can be tracked by any sense of narrative, that your existence does not, or existentialism, where it isn't your existence that gives you meaning, but you create meaning. To be able to fully kind of understand how that has shaped the identity formation of our young people, as they are explaining it to you, they will come up with solutions, I promise you. Because they've oftentimes, not just we haven't had the opportunity of actually communicating that out. As you start listing out your life goals, as you start listing out the priorities within your life, as you start talking about what is most important, what you hope to achieve when you're 70, 80, 90 years old, as you start thinking about your legacy that you're going to leave on this earth, oftentimes the first time you really think about that or plan it is when someone asks you that question, or if someone is willing to listen to you as you're speaking the answers to those questions. That encouraging those deep conversations, and sometimes those deep conversations come at the weirdest times. I know I used to be a part of this organization called Young Muslims, and alhamdulillah, they do great work. But one of the things I can tell you is some of the deepest conversations I've ever had have been in the car ride back, not in the halaqah, not in the qiyam, not in like the moments that you're designed to have those deep discussions, but like we're being dropped off, and one person got off the phone with their mother, their father, or their brother. And it just sparks a conversation which gets into the deepest core as to some major fear that someone's going through, some major identity crisis that someone's going through. And it's in a car ride with another person who's, you said something that just struck a chord with me. Being there for those moments. And oftentimes they happen when what? After a lot of physical labor, after a crazy sports session, after you're so full that like you just can't think straight anymore because you've had an amazing meal. Like, those are the times in which sometimes the deepest conversations that we can ever engage with come out. So creating opportunities that in those times, I will first and foremost be a listening ear, and I will also practice what they are supposed to be doing, because we need to do it just as much. I think that's one of the things that I've been learning a lot more, is I've been given so many opportunities to think and grow and develop as I am apparently supposed to be mentoring. Because I needed it as much, if not more, than what I'm quote unquote providing for others. Because do I have the answers of how to live in a postmodern world in which you're constantly being exposed to situations that are telling you that materials expire and that if you don't do things before a certain time, you've wasted your life away? Like, do I know how to live with that? No. I'm also going through that, but when I share and I go through it, inshallah, they share and as they're going through. And that ayah that I shared in Surah Al-Kahf, it ends by saying that Allah guides whom Allah wills. ذَلِكَ مِنْ آيَاتِ اللَّهِ. These are the signs of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And Allah guides whom Allah wills. And whoever turns away from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, for them there's no guidance. Meaning that in the conversation there might be guidance. It didn't say who it's coming from. Is it going to be from you or is it going to be from them? And oftentimes it's actually from them as they're just kind of processing something with you. So the answer is yes, listening is it, but also creating those key strategic moments in which listening can be much more than just being heard. I loved what Imam Fadil had said about being heard and being seen, because when you're seen, it's your presentation. When you're heard, it's also what the words you're saying, but also like the style of the narrative behind it. There's so much beauty that can be found within it, but creating those strategic opportunities would probably be it. So of course, the idea of being welcoming, the times in which it's going to happen, active listening. And I think we should, as masajid, one of the things we can do really well is like active listening classes. There are ways of getting better at it. From as simple things as like your body language, fixing it, when to lean in, when to lean out. When someone walks into an office, whether your chair is higher than them or lower than them, where the direction of the door is, whether the prophetic example of if all of your limbs are facing them, intonation of voices, repeating what has been said, if they brought up certain key words or certain developmental phases and they brought up their past in some way, making sure that you mention that specific moment, because if you don't, they're going to seem like you didn't pay attention to what they just said. If something was important, they mentioned a name, you mentioned the name back. Oh, they heard me, but not only me, but the people I love came from their mouth as well, so maybe there's a more connection. There's so many things that can be built on this in terms of how to be an active listener, and I think those are classes that we can offer as masajid, which would really aid in creating those environments more effectively. Sorry, I've been talking for way longer than I thought I would.
You guys go. Stop. All right. All right, so the floodgates are opening.
It said it's opening and kids are tired. All right, send the kids down and let them crash the party, inshallah. Okay, so what was the question? Yes, Anita, nice to see you. You need a mic. Do I have a mic?
Two things.
So you have one of those like comments that like turns into a question
Well,
or like something like that? No, I'm just joking.
No, I have a comment, just regarding what Sister Nadia said.
Yeah.
Just working with the youth myself for like
Mhm.
past however many years. Everything that Chaplain Kaiser said on point. Another thing is that I would also active listening, but making sure that they feel validated. Like they're not feeling like whatever they're said is invalid, because you also have to realize that although we feel like we're hip to the time today too, they're still living in a different time of like social media and like influencers and XYZ happening that we didn't have. So they're looking at it in a different perspective, and they have these like Muslim influencers, going on now too, but that's also brings out confusion for them, right? So we have to be not like a role model, but we have to like how you are as a parent, you want your daughter to look up to you, like inshallah, you would want your daughter to look up to you as that person to be, for her to model after, inshallah, right? The same way you would want your sons to model after their father. That's another thing, and we can talk more about that. But another thing is that you triggered me when you brought up Islamic school. Like, is there a way how you can stop the toxicity of Islamic school? Because my father never put me in Islamic school because he was afraid that I was going to get kicked out the second week, right? And I was a public school kid my entire life. Out of all the Muslim friends I had, I was the only public school kid. And let me tell I'm not gonna put out what they did versus what I did. But it's a learning experience, but how do you address the toxicity of the parents and the staff of Islamic schools? No offense to anyone who sent their kids to Islam, but I'm just saying, it's a toxic environment, and it's like the holier than thou moments at some point. So how do you address that?
Thank you, Sister Anita, for that. That's an excellent point. Both points are very good. We're gonna merge.
So we have two questions.
All right, one second. Don't worry, we're gonna do a follow-up session. If your answers or questions are not answered, we'll answer them next week. Okay. Yeah, it's very late. I've already gotten many text messages. Yes.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
Alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah.
Jazakumullahu khair. Thank you for this wonderful session. Again, every Friday is just a new learning experience and a new thought-provoking thing to take to the weekend, inshallah. Alhamdulillah. So, from just listening to people and to listening to beloved imams on the stage there, one of the things that I'm getting is the issue, one of the underlying issues of everything that people are speaking about is the structure. The structure in edit. Right? So when we're speaking about the youth, when Imam Khalil was talking about, the first thing that came to my mind was a hadith in which the Prophet ﷺ was speaking to his companions, and he said, he was asking them a question about a certain tree. And it was Umar bin al-Khattab and his son. And his son wouldn't speak until after they left, and then he was like, I knew it was that. And Umar was like, I wish you would have said that. But the fact that he was there in the conversation, even if he didn't say anything for edit, I'm the youngest dude here, I'm not gonna say anything, but he was there. When you think about people like Abdullah ibn Zubair and his father Zubair, his father always had his son accompany him, even at that. Right? Do we have, and also, that's just Medina. And Medina's metropolitan, it has Christians, it has Jews, it's a diverse area that there's some type of struggle for power from different civilizations. There's a clash of civilizations. But then you have, as Imam was talking about, where every community is not like that. We have like the tribes that are outside of Medina and Mecca, and it's just them, right? And they have their own thing. So what I wanted to ask after those comments was, is it a thing of structure that we need to begin to introduce into our communities as far as looking at how we live and how like maybe the parents are so focused on going to work and doing their 9 to 5, there's certain things that their children are missing from their parents' presence or lack of presence. And at the same time, a rite of passage that is missing because the parents are so focused on making sure that there's a food on the table, that the children are not getting, that will strengthen their identity in being who they are as Muslims. Not just coming to the masjid and praying, but also I am who I am. So when I go out, whether I meet Joe, John, or Jill, or Abdullah, Zubair, and Zubaydah, I am who I am, and I know where I come from, and I'm bringing that to the table, and you have to deal with that. Right? And also, I was listening to a talk today, a particular thing about Asabiyah, right? Where the Prophet was said that the Prophet said, Asabiyah is when you help your people in wrong. But anything before that is not Asabiyah. Right? Having a solidarity with your people, having a solidarity with your community is not bad as long as you're not helping them in wrong. And I think that, as we were talking about like the toxicity, in America, the Muslim community becomes a tribe. Right? Like where some people are calling Islam, or they call Muslims, oh, this is a bigotry, or this is racism. But we're not a race. We're a religion. But we treat each other like we're a race. Right? And that in itself, the way that we have this identity issue may be causing that structure, how we structure our communities here may be an issue that we have to dig in deep. Rather than getting straight to the youth, we need to look at ourselves. So let's restructure our communities a little better.
100%. 100% still. Still the one, ladies and gentlemen. So the problem is, Sidi Parvez, is that
I'll say the problem, sorry.
Oh, okay.
We talked about Adam, but we have our cleaners who've been waiting since 10 o'clock. So we could preach all we want, and they need to leave by 11. So it could be all as spiritual as we wish, but
yeah. So this is exactly the issue, is that we need to wrap up, and la ikraha fi din, I wish none of you to be compelled to stay and listen. So we're on borrowed time. Every minute that we keep you here longer is another minute for you to remember the next time we invite you. So, why don't we do this? Why don't we just meet again next month and ask our questions next month? All right, inshallah. So, but also send me your questions too, and I can get both these gentlemen to answer. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen, wa salatu wa salamu ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa ashabihi ajma'in. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك نشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت نستغفرك ونتوب إليك والعصر إن الإنسان لفي خسر إلا الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر. بارك الله بكم. May Allah bless you all. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.